Hi, and welcome to Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Today I'm reading to you from Shifter Shorts by T.K. Lawyer. Cat and Mouse. What in blazes did she get herself into? That night's activities started out with a simple game of tag at a friend's Valentine's Day costume party, but that was long ago. Somehow the rules had changed. What was fun quickly turned into something complex and dangerous. Elorah squelched the yelp, threatening to announce her location as she tripped over an uneven surface in the concrete, almost falling. She never thought she'd be in the predicament she was in. A half-man, half-beast was stalking her, and she was running for her life. He's coming, holy crap! Several times he'd informed her he was different, risky, and yes, bad, but did she listen? No. She recalled his words to her at the bar as his strong, sexy scent and his manly build drew dizzyingly closer to her. Don't toy with me, woman. I am not one of your playthings. She adjusted the round ears atop her forehead, part of her costume for the night, as vivid images of his warm breath caressing her bare shoulder x-rayed themselves into her brain. It was the last time she saw the Adonis until tonight. Oh God. A devilish glance weakened her knees, and his sexy smirks melted her into a puddle on the floor. Well, not really, but close. However, the wet origin between her thighs was definitely her soaked panties, a result of endless nights of erotic dreams with him as the main character. Elorah had her share of dates in the past, but none affected her like him. He was that good. His blue eyes and black hair caused her to sigh with happiness. He was a stud, and he knew it, and that was the problem. She shook the rapid fire of indecent images of him out of her head, picked up the long, thin black tail that dragged behind her short, red-coloured dress, and kept moving. He warned her not to tease him, but did she listen? No. She had to poke the bear, or in this case, the cougar. Holy hell, he was a shifter. The county was filled with shifters, but none she fancied more than Rowan. Saying his name wrought happy shivers through her. She was in trouble. Cat shifters were known for their preference to cuddle, please their partner first, and for their sexual prowess. The latter she was unaware of for the time being, but after tonight's escapades, who knew what lay in her future? If it ended with Rowan on top of her, under her, or inside her. She choked, coughing harshly with her sudden dry throat and the vivid images of his amazing nakedness bombarding her mind. Yes, she was in big trouble. Her legs picked up speed when she heard a loud hissing followed by a roar. Oh God, he's close. Shit. She veered off to her left, almost smacking straight into the corner of a brick building. Run, little legs, run. The game of hide-and-seek, tag, or whatever this was ended long ago, but Rowan wasn't giving up. When everyone scattered, he didn't give chase. He set his sights on her, and until he caught her, he was going to continue pursuing her. How much further could she go? She was already tiring, her legs weakening, threatening to buckle under her. She was not a runner and never wanted to be one. Exercise wasn't something she relished or even took part in. She slipped down a narrow alley and held her breath, hoping it was enough to mask the fact that there was a living, breathing being, namely her, near him. Maybe he'd stop, turn around, go home or return to the party. Yeah, right. And she was the next Powerball winner. She couldn't go on. Her body begged her to stop. Twinges in muscles she never knew existed zapped spasms through her arms and legs. She tore down the nearby alley, with a quick prayer to find one of those phone booths people reminisced about, or a good Samaritan to dial a number for her. Rowan had her. Well, almost. When the party divided into two, some hiding with others seeking in the makeshift game, The attendees created, he had already set his sight on his target. If she let him, he'd tag her with his body, immersing her with him and branding her with his scent. Then he'd walk away the victor, tossing her compliant, curvaceous body over his shoulder and taking her back to his lair before she opened her luscious mouth to protest. He grinned. Her mouth gave him all sorts of randy thoughts. There were many wonderful things he'd love to do with that mouth of hers, all of which would lead to their mutual sighs of pleasure. She didn't trust him. He didn't blame her. He warned her about men like him. He also warned her about him. Thank goodness she ignored his sound words of caution enough to find her way into this dangerous predicament. Rowan had waited long enough for her, and his patience hung by a thin string, unravelling a little more each day she wasn't with him. If it was the last thing he did, he was going to break down the invisible wall she imposed between them. He drew in the misty air, dewy from the lingering humidity, and found her scent immediately. His throat rumbled an appreciative rolling purr. Her scent was stamped in his brain, and he'd find her anywhere. Her sweet musk teased and delighted him, dancing along his tightly coiled nerves, swimming within the fibres of his muscles and targeting one firming muscle below, right between his corded thighs. He yowled with the impatient lengthening yearning to rest inside of her. Despite the folklore, not all rumours were true about cat shifters. Unlike most shifters he personally knew, Rowan was generous and giving, and he would be more so with her. He'd allow her to choose the position he'd take her in, though his preference was one where he'd watch her lovely face as she orgasmed, knowing it was because of him. He paced back and forth, unsuccessful in his quest to rid his thoughts of her. Every fibre of his being craved her. She teased him, tempted him, and yet didn't know the distracting power she had over him. Her effect was worse now that she was in heat. For the past week, she was not only attractive to him, but to every other shifter out there too. He roared as he recalled the advances of almost every single male in the facility he worked at. She was unavailable to everyone but him, and he'd keep it that way, no matter what he had to do. Dropping his lower half to the ground, he licked the back of his large paw to distract himself from his intended and his natural urge to mate. He craved her presence, but being around her this past week had been pure torture. All he wanted to do was bed her, claim her, but he wouldn't do so without her consent. Chasing Elorah zapped his energy at times and caused him to consider why he pursued a woman who refused to give in to her wants. Elorah desired him, but she wouldn't let her guard down enough to indulge. Each time she came in contact with him, her floral scent changed into a sultry, tantalizing musk that wafted its way through his nostrils and called to his primal beast. Yet, he didn't need to pursue her, and on more than one occasion he asked himself, why? Countless women were available to him, and it wasn't his ego talking. It was a shifter thing. For some reason, women were drawn to shifters, especially of the feline variety, to which he was a proud, long-standing member. Rowan had his fun with women in the past, and he enjoyed almost every one of the experiences and never received any complaints. He made sure their time together was mutually enjoyable before he let the women leave, or, in most cases, before he left. And he had certain rules. Spending the night with a female was out of the question, forbidden for all but the one he'd mate with. He also never with any of them. Waterplay was reserved for his female, the one he'd give his heart and his life to. The fact that Elorah was a virgin shouldn't excite him, but it did. Granted, she didn't fit the definition of what humans called a virgin, but she confessed to him one day while a bit tipsy that she'd never been with a shifter. Though the idea of men handling her, pawing at her, Making love to her incredibly delectable and delightful body had him itching to smash something. He was more than proud to know he'd be her first cougar and her last lover. For after she lay with him, there would be no other suitors. He'd make sure of that. If only Elorah would give herself to him, he'd happily accept her gift. The fun, however, was in the chase, though he yearned for the blissful, inevitable conclusion with her moaning beneath him. Ever since she appeared in his life, she invaded his thoughts, his daily routine and his nightly dreams, which ended in multiple, unsatisfying morning glories. He yowled again, this time louder, echoing his grave need. He longed to have her, his partner, standing beside him in the morning, and his lover warming his bed at night. She was the only one who could fulfill his need and fill the empty loneliness inside him. "Rowan, stop!" Her voice carried across the short distance, pinging its vibrational sound directly to his sensitive ears. "When I catch you, you will be mine," he roared. "No, Rowan, please." "You're mine," he growled. If she didn't know who she belonged to, she would soon. He found her cowering around the corner of a building, peering out from its brick wall, attempting to search for him in the darkness, but her human eyes weren't as sharp as his cat's. She found him, but only when he pounced, toppling her to the ground. Her eyes widened with alarm, and her luscious mouth opened but shut tight when he licked across it, happy to have tasted her. "Ack!" She exploded with a grimace, and then a shudder, holding her arm in a protective maneuver over her face. She attempted to scurry back across the ground. He placed a paw across her shoulder, stopping her. "Rowan, is it you? Please answer me." Her voice hitched, and her breathing burst forth in a jagged, uneven cycle. He lowered his head and nodded seconds before lifting his paw off her. The last thing he wanted was to scare her. She lifted to a sitting position and reached for him. He let her run her fingers over his face, the top of his ears, and across his body, relishing in her touch, sharing his contentment of her perusal of him with rolling purrs. "I've never touched a wild animal before. I mean," she laughed instead of completing her sentence. "Not that you're a wild animal, or at least I don't think you are, but wow, you're really beautiful." She ruffled his fur with gleeful squeals that warmed his heart. His cougar form pleased her, and this stirred up a private part of his heart that yearned to protect and take care of her. She leaned over and did something unexpected. Kissed his cheek. Her arms flew up in the air with a scream as he reared back with her unexpected gesture of tenderness. Rowan waited forever for this moment. Sadly, it was his cougar she kissed. Before he gathered his thoughts, she moved away. "Rowan," she screamed as she scurried to a stand. "Please, you don't want me like this." Breathing in her incredible, knee-weakening aroma, he huffed at her comment. Her plea confused him. Of course he wanted her, in any way, any time, any place. Right now would be perfect. He considered the meaning behind her words, and after several long seconds realized she was right. He scented her trepidation and fear with a raised eyebrow. He didn't expect this reaction. He wanted her willing, not scared. He chuffed. She was right. He wanted her consent and her craving him as he did. Her consensual supple body succumbing to his desire beneath him. The mere thought vibrated pleasant chills across his furry form. He'd never take her against her will. No matter how much his beast urged him to claim her and conquer her, he wouldn't do it. She'd have her freedom, and she'd come to him willingly, but come to him she would, for they were meant to be together. He glanced back down the long road leading to the house where they originally started this game. His shoulders dropped in defeat. Tonight would not be the night.